You know how powerful video is for business development, and you know that AI can streamline the production process and save you tons of money. But here's what's frustrating. Most marketers are just flooding the zone with banal brand-boasting videos that audiences scroll right past because they lack authentic human connection. Today, we are exploring how you can combine AI efficiency with genuine video storytelling that captivates audiences and moves them to action. Hi, I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story. Joining us is Nick Francis, founder of Casual, the UK's #1 brand video production company. Nick and his team have produced nearly 1,000 brand video projects annually for brands that include Adobe, Amazon, HSBC, and P&G across 9 global cities. He's just released his new book, The New Fire: Harness the Power of Video for Your Business. And he's going to share timeless human storytelling tips that AI will never replace. Hello, Nick. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Park. Great to be here.
And I know you are somewhat exhausted. You were just detailing with me your world travels of late, and you just returned back home to San Francisco. So I appreciate you taking the time and finding the energy to do the show. What were you up to?
Well, one of the funny things when you plan to build this global organization is, you're sitting around having some dinner and it sounds like such a great idea. And then the actual reality of having a business, and I know this is a slightly questionable phrase, but on which the sun never sets, is that it's early morning calls, it's late night calls, it's quite a lot of travel. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. I'm a very lucky man to have what we have, and the team's fantastic. But yeah, it's a lot. So I was just over in Europe, largely with family, but also just trying to fit in calls and meetings, so maximizing the time.
And you are producing videos all around the world for lots of different clients and lots of different languages?
Absolutely, yeah. So we were based out of London originally and then expanded to the US in about 2014 and then opened on the West Coast in 2018, which is when I moved to San Francisco. And it sort of became clear that there was a real opportunity for a real global video supplier. We work with so many global brands, and to give them the opportunity to tell local stories globally, but then also to take their global brand and to tell the global story at a local level with a local sensibility. There was kind of a white space there. And so we then expanded into Hong Kong and Singapore, and we're now in 9 cities across the world. And yeah, we work with some of the world's largest businesses to help them to do that sort of, global, local thing.
Yeah, and like everything else, video is being hugely impacted by AI, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I would like to start with talking about your dad and the impact he had in a very short time with you on what you do today.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a really interesting case study in a way of the role of parents and the way that they influence their kids' careers, because my dad worked for the BBC. He had an incredible career as a program maker. He was in Saigon during the Tet Offensive in 1968. And the BBC then said, listen, Dick, he was called Dick Francis. They said, you're doing fantastic for us. We want to set up a division that we're going to call Special Projects. And we want you to go and cover whatever you think is going on that's sort of interesting in the world. And he said, it's got to be the Apollo program. And so, long story short, he gets to North America and talks to ABC and realizes that they're not interested in broadcasting the lunar landings to the rest of the world. They're only interested in the contiguous US. And so he said, hang on a second. He bought the rights for the rest of the world. And then obviously the satellite broadcasting industry was fairly nascent. And he managed to do a series of deals that then enabled them to broadcast the lunar landings all over the world live. And so anyone who watched the landings live outside of the US did so because of my dad. He then went on and had a very distinguished career at the BBC and at the British Council. Unfortunately, he worked incredibly hard. Well, fortunately, it's a double-edged sword. But he died of a massive heart attack in 1992 when I was 10 years old. this was a year. You look at your average CEO now, and they're running Ironman, or they're doing long bike rides. They're super fit. They get up and go to the gym at 5 a.m. But back then, they were kind of red faced, too much drinking, too much smoking. I mean, living, probably quite a wonderful life, but unfortunately a short one. But the impact of losing a parent at that age it's unbelievably profound, because you're so secure in the world through your childhood. The things you have no real perception of time or mortality, and so kind of what is true now, you sort of believe it'll always be true. And I think to learn about the finality of life and the transience of our existence on this planet at such a young age has really shaped the way that I interact with people. And I think it's also maybe shaped my approach to the business as well, in that, you got one shot. So just take it, And so when we're looking at expanding kind of around the world, there's 100 reasons why you shouldn't do it. But then there's just that one, like, yeah, but you're only here, like, risk is good. You're only here once. And so, I don't know, obviously there are parallels between his career and what I'm now doing. But I think it's more that there's just a sort of natural aptitude there, rather than any kind of like desire to follow in his footsteps. So yeah, no, it's I don't know. It's a weird one. In a sense, I can look at it and see how lucky I am to have that realization at such a young age,
So do you think you would be in this business without his impact on your young life?
It's I mean, so he was a journalist originally, and a current affairs program maker. I always wanted to be a war photographer when I was a kid, because I believe that as a teenager, I used to kind of wander around with my SLR camera ready to sort of take photos of any dramas that were happening around me. And I wanted to go to war zones because I felt that it was like, that was the human experience lived at the absolute apogee. Both the kindest and the most awful, and just the sort of the richness of the experience of life in those places. Now, I may well not be here anymore had I gone down that route, but my girlfriend at the time, I was taking photos, and then I was doing some writing as well to back up the photos, because I felt that would make me a bit more employable. And my girlfriend at the time said, hey, there's this course in television journalism at City University in London. It's quite a well-regarded course. And so I applied to that, because there's this view that video was the combination of the visual and the written narrative. And so then I got a job at the BBC Breakfast News, and loved it, absolutely loved it. And so, anyway, to go back to your question, I think we probably have a fairly similar view of the world, my dad and I. And so we've kind of gone down a similar path. And, obviously his experience has shaped me. But I don't know whether it's sort of natural aptitude or sort of a real desire to be like him. In a way, he was so successful. He was doing all the Apollo stuff when he was about 35, 36 years old. And so, to try and sort of in some way kind of, not that I would ever try and better him or anything like that, but, to lose a parent at a young age, you kind of, is to spend your life kind of hankering after their affirmation. And, one of the sort of tragedies in a way is that, while a lot of people say, oh, it's amazing what you've achieved and all the rest of it, and in a sense, I guess it is, but, the one person who I want to give me a slap on the back, unfortunately, never will.
Yeah. And you had sent me a note too, in preparation for this, that you said one of your heroes growing up was Hungarian-American photographer Robert Capa, who said, if your photos aren't good enough, you're not close enough. So that little line there must have a big impact on what you do today and how you approach every project.
Completely. I love that phrase. And it was, Robert Capa, when I was, in that kind of, he was a magnum photographer during World War II. He took some absolutely iconic photos of the Spanish Civil War, before the war. And then, tragically, he was killed in French Indochina in the 1950s. He stepped on a landmine. But he was just this incredibly larger than life character, hanging out with film stars and all sorts. Very handsome man. He was the only photographer to go to war, to land on D-Day. And so, if you've seen some of those blurry photos from Utah, from Omaha Beach, he went ashore. With the first wave. So, if you watch Saving Private Ryan, you're kind of familiar with what that would have been like. He shot several rolls of film, and then he got one of the boats back out that were bringing in a later wave, and took his photos to London to be developed. And a junior developer in one of the development studios was just so blown away by the imagery that they completely overexposed all of the film, and all of his photos, bar about 3 or 4, were lost. And to think that he risked his life to get that close to the story on such an incredibly momentous occasion, and then for it all to be gone, and he just shrugged and said, "Oh well," and he took it so incredibly well. Anyway, this is a digression from the initial story. The point of that quote, if your photos aren't good enough, you're not close enough. It's relevant to all of us, because great storytelling, it's about stakes, and it's about conflict, and it's about characters, but it's also about the details that really put you in the moment. And so the closer you can get to the story, the richer that story can become. And I think one of the challenges we have as corporate communicators, particularly in the modern world, where there's such a sort of hunger for content and just like get it out, that we risk being far too superficial in the stories that we tell, because you're constantly moving on to the next thing. So, there was a wonderful, we can come on to AI in a minute. We were doing some work for Hilton. Hilton's one of our clients globally. And we were in Dallas, and one of the producers was talking to this lovely old boy who was one of the concierges in the hotel. Turned out he was, and forgive me if some of these numbers are not quite right, but I think he was about 90 years old. His wife had died when he was 65, and he got a bit bored sitting around at home, and he decided to go back to work. And he had just celebrated his 50th anniversary with Hilton. He was such a lovely man. He'd write letters to the people that he chatted to at the desk. And the story was just so unbelievably rich. But this producer, they've been staying in the hotel while they're doing another film. And they just met this guy and were like, this man is incredible. Like, just for the sort of, to bring alive the kind of Hilton culture and the type of people who make up their staff. This is a wonderful story that we need to tell. And it's that being close, it's being open-minded to stories and narratives around you, being close enough to the image, if you like. That's where you find those stories. And so, without wanting to jump ahead to AI too quickly, when I look at so much of what we do, so much of the value in the work that we do for our clients is in our sort of great human storytellers and producers and filmmakers going out into the world and experiencing and being open-eyed about what's happening around them and saying, that's the story we have to tell right now. And it's in that kind of the sort of gray human messiness that AI just falls over. AI is great if you are giving very specific tasks around data sets. You can bounce up. It's all good. We can talk about it in a minute. But dealing with the messiness of humanity is what humans do fantastically. And getting people out there and close to the stories is where you find things that are really, really going to resonate and really going to move the needle for the companies we work for.
It's interesting. You were talking about Hilton, and I was doing a story training with them. Oh gosh, it's 7-8 years ago now, and I had a lot of their sales and marketing team in there. And we're just talking about story structures and frameworks and whatever. And there was this one young professional. She was Filipino, and she was very vivacious, and you could tell this woman was going to move up through the organization. And halfway through, I finally asked her. I said, "Why did you choose Hilton? Why did you choose the tourism industry? And she kind of looked surprised, as if nobody had ever asked her that question before. And she talked about being a young girl growing up in the Philippines, and her rich aunt and uncle moved away from the Philippines into Japan, and they never had any money to travel because they were very, very poor. And every now and again, their aunt and uncle would bring her over and spend some time in Japan and come back. On one of her return trips, she goes, I must have been 6 years old, maybe. She was very young. They were driving down the road, and she saw a billboard promoting tourism to the Philippines, and she didn't understand it. She's like, what's that, Mommy? And, oh, that's an advertisement to get people to come here. And she goes, well, why would they come here? We always go to Japan. And she goes, oh, because we have beautiful places, and it's a very big for the Philippines. In fact, your aunt so-and-so and your so-and-so, all work for travel here. And she goes, that was her thing. She goes, I can travel the world if I get into the tourist business, because it's the way that my family makes money on the Philippines. And that was her sole little moment. That then she came over to the U.S., she went to school here, graduated, and had been working for Hilton for several years at that point. And to me, that kind of underscores what you're talking about. If your photos aren't good enough, you're not close enough. I had no idea what motivated this woman or why she was there at Hilton until she took me to that moment in time when she saw that billboard and her mother explained, that's big business and you can see the world. That's, as a young lady, that's what got her going.
Yeah, I mean that's a great story, and it's exactly that point. I think another point it illustrates is just that every business is the amalgam of hundreds, thousands, millions of stories. And, whether that's the stories behind each member of staff, the way people interact with their products, there's obviously the sort of the broader market story if it's a public company, there's the founding story, there's just so many different narratives that flow through it. And it is funny, we often talk to brands who are like, oh, but like, we have none of oh, well, it's all very well for Hilton having this like really interesting guy, but we don't have anything like that. And you're like, everyone has incredible stories. You just got to get close to the photo, and you also have to open your ears. You really have to listen to people, and have the agency and the imagination when people are talking to you to be like, oh, and to jump and be like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to go and talk to that person. And so, yeah, building yourself the time into any project to be able to sort of go that bit deeper is really fundamental to being able to find those different interesting stories.
One of my favorite lines, actually, it is my single favorite line, I'm sure you've heard it, is the tome of F8 and Be There.
Mm.
And it was reportedly some guy was on the top of Everest and he got this amazing sunrise. And when he got down, someone said, how did you get that picture? And he goes, F8 and Be There. And to me, that means get off your ass and pay attention. And that F8 and Be There is always about a moment. And storytelling to me is typically about a moment in time when things have changed. Mm. And you as the Homo sapien has to deal with that change. And how did you either overcome or take advantage, or how did it impact your life? And so I've always loved that, F8 and Be There.
Absolutely.
And my father one time said he was in heavy construction. They were having a real problem with tunnels caving in and whatever. And they were out there one Saturday, and he told me, I said, Dad, why are you on the job on Saturday? I was a little kid. And he goes, because we've had all these problems. We don't want to lose any lives. And I go, so what are you doing? He says, well, we're trying a bunch of different stuff. And I go, what do you mean you're trying? Aren't you just fixing it? And he goes, no, you got to do something even if it's wrong. Yeah. You have to keep going until you figure out what the right thing is. And to me, that also is like the F8 and Be There. By wrong, it's not morally wrong. Wrong is, no, that's the wrong solution. Let's just keep going until we find the right solution. And so much of that I find in storytelling too.
Perseverance, digging deeper and being open-eyed,
Yeah. Well, oh my God, I mean, every company, and I'm sure you see it around the world, and it doesn't matter what civilization, what language they're speaking, they're standing on an absolute gold mine of story content with their people. And I imagine that's what you guys do at Curious, is to go out, you're curious, and you dig it up.
Mm-hmm.
and you reveal,
Yeah.
here's a nugget. Let's expand on this story. Tell us a little bit about your process.
Well, we work with a real breadth of businesses, from kind of business services through legal, automotive, all like big tech. We try to spend as much time as we can with the clients to really understand what are the problems we're trying to solve. I think one of the challenges we have as an industry is that because we're producers and producing is about solving problems, we tend to jump far too quickly to, okay, what's the film we need to make? And actually, I think we, as and again, this is an industry-wide thing, but like it's something I really try to coach people at Casual is like, we need to just take a moment to be like, what's the problem we're trying to solve here, right? Because video is the most powerful communications tool we've ever invented. Short of being face-to-face in the room with someone, the ability to communicate emotion to a dispersed audience that video gives you makes it the biggest evolution in storytelling since the fire. And so how do we use this unbelievably powerful tool to solve business problems for our clients? We're not just about making films. It's about understanding what's the challenge, and then what are the stories we need to tell in order to overcome that challenge. Who do we need to move, and how do they need to be moved? What are the stories that are going to resonate for them, and how is that going to inspire them to take action? Quite often people go, well, why are we paying you $50,000 for a film when I could just make a film with my iPhone? And in a sense, in the age of AI, with production getting more and more accessible, that question is coming up again and again. And what I say is like, well, if you want a film, if your goal is a film, then just get your iPhone out and shoot it right now. Do it for free. You don't need to pay $500 for it. If you want a tool that is going to achieve something for your company, then you really have to do it with people who know what they're doing. Particularly because the compounding benefit of creative and of good storytelling over time is vast. And the challenge, one of the challenges I think we have, is that people think so short term, because everyone's on it's quarter to quarter. It's like, what are we doing now? How are we going to lift our sales this year? The real benefit of content, as when you're building an audience over time, the real benefits come in 18 months, 36 months plus. But to encourage clients, even very savvy, aware businesses, to be like, look, we need to invest in this for the next 18 months, 36 months. Yes, we can show KPIs along the way to show it's effective and that we can see things are working. But if you really want to see the outsized kind of exponential benefit, it's going to happen not in this quarter, and frankly, not this year, and maybe not even next year. But we can show you that it is working. And so, yeah, I just find it an incredibly exciting time to be working in this space, because there's so much change, and there's, it's hard. It's really hard for people because of all the change. But in that change, there's an incredible opportunity.
And by the way, my apologies. I referred to your brand name as Curious because I can see the curious in your face. It's casual, so sorry for that.
It is casual, but, yeah.
Why casual
curious
over
too.
Curious?
Yeah. Okay, so that course that I did in television current affairs journalism was called TV Caj, and some friends of mine and I were asked to produce a film for a local charity, and they said, right, we need to come up with a name. And we were like, well, TV Caj, television current affairs journalism, TV Caj, casual films. And so we just called ourselves Casual Films. And then when my ex-business partner and I set Casual up in its current form, the film that I'd made when I was at journalism school had kind of gone down relatively well. It had been played at BAFTA in London. And so we thought, well, let's just use that, because, we need a name, and that kind of works as well as any. Now, it's funny. When business is good, you don't worry about your name. When things have been tough in the past, we're like, oh my gosh, it's the name. It's because we're called Casual. And I think you do maybe open yourself to low blows, where we were on a shoot once, and like you get these kind of trendy sort of asymmetric haircut people working in creative, and we're setting the shoot up, and the person we were about to interview was sitting there, and he goes, "Oh, so you're casual, are you?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Is that why that guy's wearing ripped jeans?" And I was like, "Damn." I mean, I think the way we frame it now would be to say that we're casual. It's, our clients, the clients that we work a lot with, say that we're casual because we just make the process so easy. And, in the same way that if you're, I don't know, like being a great golfer is about just completely being casual in your swing. You sort of forget, you can just forget about all the things that need to happen, and just give it that muscle memory. We do nearly 1,000 projects a year. Some of those projects have got over 250 deliverables. And so we're delivering tens of thousands of films a year. And, every single film down the ages has taught us something. And that's just an incredible bed of institutional learning. So anyway, that's why we're called casual.
Good. I like it. I like it. But when I got your pitch from your PR firm, or I guess no, is Hayes, who must work for you. Yeah, she's great.
Hayes,
I got to hand it to her. She has really terrific follow-up, and is one of the better pitches I get, and I get a lot of them. But the first thing I thought, too, is like, okay, you've got a new book out. We'll talk about that in a minute, too. But how is AI steamrolling your business? Because, of course, we're all seeing AI creation out there in video, and, I could just create an AI film, and it'll be great, and push it out there, and then move on to the next one. What are you seeing?
I would say the biggest impact of AI currently on us is in the erroneous belief among a lot of our clients that you can press a button and get a film. There's this perception, and you go on LinkedIn and you see it all the time. It's like, I made this film in 30 minutes and it would have cost $100,000. Having made a lot of AI films, all our team we're using AI as much as possible. We obviously did our AI Film Fest where, there were some absolutely fantastic entries.
And what was that? What was the AI Film Fest?
Well, it became clear to us that while the whole company has a kind of an understanding of the traditional production process, AI and AI production is a kind of, it's a slightly different beast. I mean, you're still using filmmaking skills, you're still using the type of directions that you would use as a director, or and skills as an editor or a script writer. But we wanted everyone to do it so that they just get it, and they can understand like where it's strong, and they can understand where it's incredibly frustrating. And actually, using an image like a video generator, it takes a long time to create consistency. It takes a long time to create something that is good, that's strong. You can get wonderful results, of course. And actually, one of the challenges is around just creating consistency. And there are ways you can do that. Obviously, you can upload images of your characters, and then go through the prompting and get a video that way, and then you can cut it. But in terms of like actual hands-on production, it's still a fair way off. But the challenge we have with so many clients is, if they're signing off a $250,000 kind of comms project, there's this sort of feeling in the back of their minds that like, am I going to look stupid tomorrow when someone turns up and says, actually, I can do this for $2,000 with AI? And I'll tell you, frankly, there's absolutely no way you can do that. I know there's no way, because we are incredibly across it. But it's just that the uncertainty, coupled with just the sort of, the general kind of macroeconomic uncertainty in the world at the minute, that's been the kind of the most pernicious effect of AI. In terms of using it through our processes, it's hugely valuable. From like filling out creative briefs. So if you want to enhance a brief, if you have a good idea and you want to like bounce off it and hone that idea. If you're trying to expand on a creative treatment, for instance, it can be quite useful for that. But what I found in the film that I made, and it's certainly not the best film I've ever made, and I, as I said, I just found it incredibly frustrating not being able to get it to do exactly what I wanted it to do. maybe that's just my own lack of real skill. There's probably some of that in it. I found I wanted to use it a bit like you would a teammate. A lot of people are like, oh, well, AI is a tool, and I think it's more than that. It's a teammate. It's a teammate in the same way that an editor or a good illustrator or a script writer is just a really valuable resource for you to be able to say, hey, I've written this. Can we just tighten it up? How could I improve the impact on this? How could I, this character feels a little thin. Can you give me some suggestions to make the character a bit richer? So yeah, it's a film. It's a member of the team. It isn't the team. Now, I may be like in time. I live in San Francisco. I'm surrounded by these like AI boosters who, you wouldn't believe it. They've got scores of billions of dollars invested in something happening, and they spend their lives talking about how it's definitely going to happen. So we'll see. I may be wrong. AI may take over the world, and there may be no role for humans in 10 years' time. I mean, if that happens, we've got bigger fish to fry, right? And so and as I was saying earlier, I think so much of what we do, certainly for our clients, it's in kind of taking. They know they want to achieve something. They know they have a problem they want to try and solve, but they don't necessarily know how to translate that into a film. And so much of what our producers do is spend time with the client to really try and kind of, for want of a better metaphor, midwife the idea from the client. And one of the challenges with AI, I think, is that it's so easy to go from your initial idea to your output that if you don't know exactly what you want, you'll get exactly what you ask for, and that isn't necessarily exactly what you want. Mm-hmm. And so
it becomes a shortcut, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's a shortcut. Okay, I think this is good enough. I don't want to think about it, spend any more money on it. Let's go. Yeah. And then you end up with a very feeble production if it works for you at all.
Completely. And you actually, like real creativity is about constraint. Creativity thrives through constraint. It's one of the reasons why the type of kind of brand and corporate work that we do is so like wonderful in a sense, because there's so many constraints. There's brand constraints, there's the constraints of what we're trying to achieve, there's constraints of the audience. You have to be so disciplined in using your creativity that it really lets it flourish. Unconstrained creativity is anarchy, but if you constrain it, it becomes incredibly powerful. And I find that one of the challenges with AI is the lack of constraints. Means that you never have to really engage your creative mind to really to really lift the production. And so what I mean by that, we talk about like when you make a film, you make 3 films. There's the film you script, there's the film you produce and shoot, and then there's the film you edit. And the challenge with and each of those films is different, and they're different because you may script something that then you turn up to shoot and you're like, we wanted to shoot this in a parking lot, but the parking lot's closed, so we're going to go and shoot it on that cliff top instead. And then actually you get this incredible sunset behind the cliff top that you didn't necessarily expect to get, right? And then you get into the edit and you're like, oh, this section was really strong. And you watch it back, you're like, oh, actually, no, it's not. But then if we change this around and we make more of that character, that's going to make the film a lot stronger. And it's in each of those, the necessity of having to use your creativity to fix the challenges that happen at each stage that really, really allows the creativity to flourish. Whereas with AI, you just get the film that you initially scripted. You don't have to go through that, the sort of the complexities and the challenges of the creative process that actually lead you to a better outcome. So, I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm too down on AI. I think it's incredible, like genuinely incredible. And, we use it like throughout all of our processes. But, you just do need to, I think some of the froth needs to come off it a little.
So if your photos aren't good enough, you're not close enough to it. If your AI isn't good enough, you're not close enough to it. You haven't used it as a teammate. You haven't worked with it yet to really understand it. I mean, it's just another example of that same sort of philosophy, I guess.
Completely.
So tell me about your new book, The New Fire. which I thought was interesting. I thought that was kind of a bold title, like, what do you mean the new fire? Harness the power of video for your business. Well, people have been harnessing the power of video for their businesses forever. What's new about it now?
There's been such an explosion in the use of video, obviously, over the last, really since the iPhone, the advent of the iPhone, about 2007. I mean, Casual was founded in 2006, which is around about the same time as YouTube. So, we should have gone into video sharing instead of video production. But, I'll do that in my next life. I remember I was in Zurich with a big pet food client. And we were doing a presentation. It was a very interactive presentation around brand storytelling and trying to understand what are the different stories in their business and how could we bring them to life. And some of the things they were saying were incredible. There was a children's hospital where they would take animals in and help these kids who are convalescing, in some cases from really challenging illnesses, and they'd take the cats and dogs in with them, and they could stroke them, and it was really, really beneficial to their recovery. They also had pet days where they could bring all their pets into the office. They really kind of lived the pet thing, as a pet food brand. And I was like, this stuff is amazing. You really need to be telling these stories. There's so much, there's such rich reserve of stories that will move the needle for your company here. And at the end of it, the marketing director or the marketing manager, whoever, I think it was marketing director, she came up to me and I'm talking to her and she's like, Nick, you're absolutely right. We have so much here. The problem is that the senior leadership of the company, they grew up in a different age of marketing and communications and advertising. And they say, look, if we're doing an ad, what they see all video as ads. If we're going to do that, we want to open on the logo. We need the housewife who's feeding it's so old school. We need the housewife who's feeding the dogs to say, I have to use this brand of pet food because, it gives Fido a really glossy coat and it really sorts his teeth out, right? And then we want to end with a big splash of the logo again. You're just this just feels, And so there's this incredible evolution has left people behind. And I just wanted to write a book because, it's funny because, they say the medium's the message. Arguably, I should have made a film. We're actually working on a documentary series follow-up of it on the power of story. So, maybe the medium will be the message there. But I wanted to write a book because, it is for senior leadership. It's for people who maybe want to understand how video can just be this absolutely incredibly transformative tool. The reason I call it the new fire was, as I was saying, video is the most powerful storytelling tool since the fire. Before fire and story and humans, we're all so wrapped together because before we discovered fire, we didn't get enough nutrients from our food. We also had to go to bed when the sun went down. What fire gave us was more time in the day, but it also allowed us to get more nutrients, which then enabled our brains to grow. Because the nutrients you need to grow a brain are vast, absolutely vast. And you can't get it just from eating kind of grass and shrubs and things, And so our brains grew, and that gave us the ability to start to think abstractly. But then having a longer day enabled us to talk abstractly. And so people who've studied the last hunter-gatherer communities in Africa and in Papua New Guinea, when they look at the language they use during the day versus the evening, it shifts very markedly. So during the day, they talk in very sort of action-oriented terms. Go there, do that. Watch out for that tiger. Whereas in the evening, they laugh, they joke, and they share stories, and that's how they pass down information. And so, fire and our proximity to it and our use of it in order to kind of to get more from our food enabled us to then grow the brains we needed to think abstractly, and then it also gave us the time we needed in order to use that abstract thought to tell story, which is why story is so powerful, because we've literally been using it for hundreds of thousands of years to share understanding of the world. And it's why a story is facts in a story are 22 times more memorable than facts that are just relayed alone. And when you transfer that to a commercial environment, brand loyalty, purchase intent, everything goes up. Brand loyalty goes up by about 30% with communications that involve like emotive storytelling versus traditional advertising. Purchase intent goes up by about 27%. I mean, the numbers are incredible. The challenge that we have, and sorry, I'm going off a slight tangent here. One of the challenges we have is that so many clients look at the work and go, well, this sort of brand storytelling stuff feels a bit woolly, and also where's the ROI? And we're living in this world now over the last kind of 18 months, 24 months or so, where, people are in fear for their jobs, and finance department are going, right, let's see some return. And so marketing is moving towards being like, okay, performance marketing. And I hate the term for performance marketing because it gives the perception that like the other stuff isn't performing. It's easier to put a number against it for sure. But like without the brand marketing, performance marketing doesn't work. The way I think
they should call it underperformance marketing. It's an oxymoron in a lot of respects.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think with performance marketing, you're trading off the sort of brand affinity that you build through brand marketing. The way I see it is like, you play. It's a football field or a soccer field. Brand marketing is kicking the ball up the pitch, right? Performance marketing is kicking the ball in the goal, right? So if all you're doing is performance marketing, you're going to be taking longer and longer kicks from further back to try and score. It's just going to get harder. Whereas if you're like constantly you're building like a real strong brand presence, brand affinity with your audience, and there's stuff in there that's traceable as well. Then when it comes to taking a performance marketing shot, and of course there's a role for performance marketing, if you're taking that from from inside the 5-yard box, you're going to score every time. But the two have to work together.
Yeah, without a doubt. What will people learn from your book?
Well, it's about 274 pages long, so there's quite a lot to learn in there. It kind of the first bit is a bit of a sort of academic analysis of like the role of video in the modern world and why storytelling, why propaganda's been so incredibly powerful. It's why Lenin said that the cinema was the most important form of communication. And so if you kind of go down through the ages, like video has moving image has always been used to share moments with diverse audiences. And the wonderful thing about the world that we live in now is that that power is in all our hands. I mean, maybe wonderful, and one of the challenges is the fact that it's in all our hands. And then the second half of the book is just... So
what you're saying is we're all carrying the fire.
We're all carrying the fire.
And it's in our iPhone.
Yeah. So, we're all carrying the fire. And, and I like the metaphor of fire because it's like, it warms you. It can, like, power a rocket to the moon, but it can also destroy you, and it can burn you. And so, with that power... you just got to use the power right, I guess. But anyway, learning from the book, I've also got like a breakdown of like how to identify a target audience, how to write a brief, how to tell a compelling story, and then thinking about distribution and data-oriented storytelling. So yeah, there's quite a breadth to it.
That's great. And when does it come out?
It's out. You can get it even now.
It's officially now. Okay, good. Amazon or
on
whatever.
Amazon, yeah. And in fact, actually, I've got an offer. If I blog weekly on LinkedIn around storytelling and creative entrepreneurship, and so if any of your listeners want to, if you subscribe to my newsletter, it's Nick Francis Film. You can see it, LinkedIn, Nick Francis Film. It's called Beyond Casual. If you subscribe to my newsletter and then DM me your address, I'll send you a copy. How about that?
Oh, that'll be great. That? And we'll have that link in the show notes as well, too, so people can easily get it. So we lit a little bit of a fire with our StoryCycle Genie and ran Casual Films through it, sent you over the findings, unbeknownst to you, said, what do you think? How is this telling your story? What was your first take on it? I
thought it was really impressive, actually. It's I shared it with some of the team, and they were like, it's... it kind of nails it, actually. I kind of want to know how you did it.
Well, you know what that means, though, right? That means that you all at Casual Films, you all are doing a really good job of telling your story, because all we did is had it visit your website. Just gave it your URL, and in about 2 minutes, it gave me the brand assessment that I emailed you. And then I said, okay, not knowing intimately your story, I said, yep, okay, let's say that's good. Now create their entire story strategy based on our StoryCycle system. And it took about another 2 to 3 minutes to go through, create that. I said, make a PDF. In 10 minutes, I had sent it off to you.
I mean, but this, again, this is why AI is just incredible, absolutely incredible. And so, and it's such a force multiplier. It takes your creativity and goes and allows you to, now we can sit down and start talking about it. Whereas before, there's kind of hours and hours of work there if someone had done that.
Oh yeah, this would have taken 3 to 4 months. Has been my experience, having run the StoryCycle system and done it with several companies over the last 20 years. It was a 3 to 4 month process of due diligence, discovery, research, creative meetings, coming up with ideas. Well, what about this? What about that? Now it takes all that intel that we use in our 10-step StoryCycle system. We've built it in what we call the StoryCycle Genie. Of course, it's driven by AI, but we have our own proprietary platform called Brightsea that it's all built on. So it's not hallucinating, and it's giving you what you need. And so what this is doing is just revealing how you are currently showing up in the world, and it does one of 3 things. It validates what you're already doing well. It might highlight, reveal some gaps or some missed opportunities that you could fix in your brand story. And I'm hoping that maybe you've seen it. What people have been telling us, it provides inspiration on new, fresh ways to think about telling your story.
Yeah, well, I really like the elements around differentiation, and it kind of completely nails it. It's the point I was saying about global businesses to be local, local businesses to be global, and making sure that those narratives flow. And the fact that I identified that as the key differentiator, that I would have done exactly the same. So that's it's very positive.
So your position statement, it wrote, again, based off of the story you're already telling out there, Casual Films is the only global video production company that transforms corporate storytelling through strategic content creation, delivering unified brand messaging across multiple regions with local expertise, innovative content methodologies, and proven business impact for world-leading brands.
Sounds about right.
And if there's anything wrong with that or needed to be corrected, then you just, within the Genie, if you're running this yourself, you go in and say, that's really good, but I want you to think about this, I want you to think about that. You don't have to worry about any prompt engineering, because we've done all that. Sean Schroeder is a guy behind the prompt engineering, is brilliant at it, and it's just a matter of going in and sitting down and walking through it. And just as if you're sitting across from me or another branding expert, you use it as a teammate. It is a tool, but it's a teammate, and then you could even get your own people in there, and once you've got the story done, have them give their insights on it, and it will keep learning. We call it the brand brain. You build the brand brain. You then create the content playbook based off the brand brain and your individual audiences, and from there you can create any strategy, any piece of content that will always be on brand for you, because the Genie now, it knows you. You are, we say, let your brand genius out of the bottle. First you bottle it up, and then you release it onto the world. So I'm curious if something like this, would this work in your world in film creation to help be like a tool or a teammate in your industry?
Yeah, for sure. Because I think what it does, from what I've seen, is, we're talking about a business being all these different narratives. It's clarifying the different narratives and how they resonate for each of the different audiences, also called kind of target demographics. So that's really strong. Fun enough, we built a GPT where we put all of our creative treatments from the past in, all of our scripts, basically thousands. And then, you can ask it questions about, you can assess briefs against it. So it'll tell you whether a brief's any good. It will also tell you, like a script assessor, like whether it's a good script, but like whether it needs to be like how it needs to be fixed. But like something that's a bit more kind of brand story focused, we don't currently have. And yeah, I was just very impressed. It's cool. It's cool that you've done that.
Well, good. And a lot of people look at me late in my career saying, what the hell are you doing messing around with AI? But it's just like you said at the beginning of the show, you got to take some risks. You got to experiment. And I'm just so fascinated by it because to me, like in your film world, what is happening in AI with the storytelling world is completely fascinating. And how can we, like in my last episode, how can we combine our emotional intelligence and use that force multiplier, as you talked about, with AI to come out with even more powerful content that moves the needles and to do it faster.
Oh, I mean, it's unbelievably exciting. Partially from an independent film standpoint, budget is so hard raising money to make films. The fact that you can now make a film for a fraction of the budget if you have the time, that's a really exciting thing, and look, there's a lot of dross at the minute because it's just, just because you can make something that looks cool doesn't mean it's going to be watchable. And it sort of reminds me, like when digital SLRs first came out, and we were shooting with these beautiful lenses, and we just literally couldn't believe that this camera was shooting these incredible images. And we'd just be like filming like candles and stuff. And it's just like, yeah, it looks cool, but it's like completely dull as anything. And it's the same, you sort of see it, you see videos that people have shared and you're like, oh yeah, it's cool imagery. But God, it's like, where's the narrative? Like the story is still essential. But like, when I think about the way that we need to use AI as an industry, it's not just in like, yeah, you can do what you've always done and you can do it faster and cheaper, right? But that's kind of what everyone's going to do. I think what AI gives us the opportunity to do is to take the kind of VFX and visual effects that we would have used in a $500,000, $1 million film, and you can put them into a 20 grand film or a 50 grand film or a 10 grand film or whatever. Like if you've got the time, you can do that, right? And so we did a kind of demo the other day with like obviously filming for like business services and sort of big kind of global corporates. We shoot a lot of B-roll in offices. So like endless people typing, like people walking down corridors and stuff. And it's kind of like, it's essential, but it's dull. And this demo basically kind of, it puts a shark in the boardroom and it puts a clown on the table and, people abseiling down the outside and anyway, you can see how like that could potentially serve the narrative. So, I don't know whether we'd necessarily want to include sharks in the boardroom in one of our corporate films for one of our clients. But you can see how, like, if that's the kind, with film, you're always looking for like how can you show as well as tell, right? How can you use visual metaphor to back up the story that you're telling? Whether it's kind of in the audio or like the overarching narrative. So if we can put sharks in the boardroom, or we can, I don't know, whatever the story is, AI gives us the opportunity to do that. And that would have been like a 50 grand VFX shot 24 months ago.
Yeah, so it can enhance
100%.
Your production value.
But more importantly, enhance the quality of the creative messaging. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and to me anyways, and it always will be, no matter what happens with AI and long after I'm gone, is to me storytelling is the software that drives the hardware of our meaning-making limbic brain. Our survival brain. How do we know what to do next? It computes through story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for being here. I know, man, you've been on a whirlwind tour, so I appreciate your time. And what is the number one best way for people to track you down?
It's an absolute pleasure, Park. I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's fantastic. If you want to track me down, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's Nick Francis Film. Yeah, just check me out. Come say hi. I've got my blog that I publish every week where I share all the things that I'm learning and all the things I'm kind of ruminating on. We've also got a podcast, the Audience Connection podcast. So you can find that wherever you find your podcasts. And other than that, check out casualfilms.com and hit me up on LinkedIn. It'd be great to continue the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Park. Absolute pleasure.
Well, you heard the excitement Nick had about our StoryCycle Genie, and I don't want to just leave it there. Here are some other people that have been enthralled by the output of the StoryCycle Genie to help them validate what they're doing well, reveal gaps and missed opportunities that they can easily remedy, and inspire them with thoughtful, fresh ways to tell their brand story.
And it's legit. I mean, it really is. It's legit. I haven't had time to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, but it certainly was very, very powerful and useful, Park.
I thought it did a really good job of really just homing in on the essence of who we are and what it is we're seeking to achieve without, 75 different documents or blog posts or videos or web pages or what have you.
It's faster than doing it yourself. All of Park's knowledge, the structured framework, which I know, the proven thing, it never doesn't work. It's the core of what you do, plus all these examples here, and you will quickly clarify your core brand story, and you can iterate it to get close, if you're not that close, right? And everything else, and here's 52 things that people have created with it.
I thought it was great. It was very easy. I had a lot of collateral, obviously, with the website that it was able to dig through. It went through it very quickly. Tell you that I was thoroughly impressed with everything I got. I read through everything. I like some of the talking points that it created in here. We're an old boot, right? We're a 40-year-old company. We're not a new guy, right? We're not a new story. Our story's old, but it really gave me some new perspective, and I think it's exciting.
Yeah, but I had fun. I had fun, and it's so, look, it is a genie, isn't it? Like it's magic. It really is magic.
Are you ready to generate the revenue growth your business deserves? Well, it starts by crafting a vibrant brand story, and you can do that in minutes, not months, with the StoryCycle Genie. Then from that story, you can create brilliant sales and marketing strategies and instantly produce on-brand, compelling content that converts customers. So check it out at StoryCycleGenie.ai. And there is absolutely no risk and all reward, because if you are not 100% enthralled with what the StoryCycle Genie produces for you almost instantly, then we will refund 100% of your first month's subscription. Just visit StoryCycleGenie.ai and let your brand genius out of the bottle. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Business of Story. If you liked what you heard, please share it with anybody and everybody you know who is doing video production or thinking about video production, and hear Nick's wisdoms and insight on how to continue to create authentically human video stories that actually make a difference in the world. I hope you'll join me on Monday when Sarah Ney, CEO of Duct Tape Marketing, will be here to talk about her new book, Unchained: Breaking Free from Broken Marketing Models. You're not going to want to miss it. And until then, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that one great. Thanks so much for listening.